how's it going, everybody out there? Hope you're having a great day. Got my coffee right here. Of course, I always have my curiosity with me. So, yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into our first learning focus of the day, that being our language focus, Japanese. And yeah, let's get right into it. I'm gonna follow our mastery schedule here of hiragana. So Ru is a Z with like an iguana tail at the end. Ru. If you turn bit sideways, it says no, so no rules. It's an interesting way of thinking about it for sure. I guess I have nothing else better for memorization's sake than the Z with the iguana tail. That's right. Our A plus penmanship right here, really showing off at this point. Re. Ray of sunshine across the mountains. See, I feel like this one makes I think that this one makes a lot more sense, at least to me personally. Ray of sunshine, Ray. Can actually like visualize it. Again, some expert tracing skills happening right now. We got Rosuku. It's candle. Ro. It looks like almost like the TikTok logo. A road. Oh, that makes sense. A road could be like, I don't know, could describe a lot of these Japanese symbols. Nevertheless, it's again show off our perfect tracing skills right there. Lovely, lovely. All right, and we'll continue. Wasabi, Wario's big fat dumpy. Yo, that's crazy. Wow. Let's write it. Not sure I'm gonna be able to. Oh my god, it just keeps getting better and better. The tracing skills. Whoa, indeed. There's a lot going on here. Denwawo Suru. Denwa Suru. Whoa. Dewa Suru. To make a phone call. No, it's cool how that phrase is just one large word. Alright, let's get to tracing. Lovely, lovely. Alright, let's look at the mnemonic. I can't say this. Anemone? It's like that other word. Stickman sitting on a worm. Ah, okay. He's a worm rider. Alright, study. Oh. Ooh, we're getting thrown right into the fire here. This one. Ah, shoot. Chi. That one. Okay. You. Right? Yeah, okay, cool. Sue got that dump truck. Okay. E. I think it's this one. Frick yeah. No. No is this. What? Okay. So this is meh. And this is new right here. Wah. Boom. Easy money. Right here. Key. Of course, it's the one that looks like a key. Toe. Toe is this one right here. Mo. Go right there. And we're wrong. Tough. Knee. Not too sure I remember this one, to be completely honest, but we have a 25% chance of getting it right. So, process of elimination. That's me? Oh yeah, that's me. So it can't be that. Knee. Screw it. We'll just go right there. Okay. Good to note. Ke. I remember the mnemonic. I think that's how you say that word. Of this one. It looks like a keg, so it's that one. Ma. Ma is like the mast on a ship. There we go. Ra. Pretty sure it's this one. Nice. He. I remember that they said you can remember this one because it looks like a heel of a shoe. Ta. That's the T equals. I. Go right here. Oof. Okay, so the one I chose was re. Nice. Me. So me is... I believe it's this one. Nice. The Z with the iguana tail we learned earlier was Ru. That is Fu. This one. There's a lot going on here. I think this is one of the newer ones though, and it is not. Ne. Okay. Noted. If I remember correctly, the way you remember this one is re because it's a river, or it looks like a river. Nice, nice. The equal sign. This is ko, because it's like two koi fish swimming in a pond. Presumably a pond anyways. This one is, I want to say mu. I think it is mu. Hell yeah. Re. Let's see here. I want to say this one just because we learned some of the R's are at the start of our session today. Nice. Rho. Rho is the TikTok symbol. We got ho. Ho, ho, ho. I think that's this one because if you turn it around, or if you flip it on its side, it says ho. Nice. New. So this is meh. No, this one's meh, so this must be new. Alright, nice. Whoa. I think we learned this one today too. It's fresh in the memory. Ya. Ya is this one because he's like throwing a punch or something along those lines. Hi. I think hi is the smiley face, right? The horseshoe. Nice. Moo or me? Well, it's definitely not moo. Well, I don't think it's moo, so it must be me. Nice. Ha. I think ha is this one because it's similar to ho, but it doesn't actually say ho. This one. I'm gonna be real, I'm not too sure what this one exactly is. Oh, nah, because he's throwing out trash. Nice. Sa. Sa is this one. Yo. Is this yo? It's a snake saying what's up. So it must be yo. Yeah. A. I mean. By process of elimination, it's got to be this one. And I'm wrong. Wow. So the one I chose was Ka. This is A. Noted. Ka, right there. Tsu, it's a tsunami wave. I believe it's this one. Cool. Ni. Ni must be this one. And this one, I'm be honest and don't really. Is this Ni? Nice. That was actually a complete shot in the dark, so the luck must be out with me today. O. Believe it's this one. Cool. No. No, it's this one. Because it looks like no in an arbitrary sort of way. We got mo money, mo problems right here. Let's go. And then A we said is this one. Alright. Nice. I think we're capable of going 5 mo right here. N. Except it's not an N, it's an H. And then we got Kanban. Kanban? Is that Kanban? Signboard. Good to know. Looks like a lowercase n. Yep. Oh, wait, does it? I don't know, man. It kind of looks like a lowercase h to me, but to each their own. Let's go flex our perfect tracing skills right here. Oh my god. Literally perfect. Ga. Gaishoku. 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 Eating out. How do you remember Ga? Just like Lady Gaga. The Ka have the extra buns on the head, and it makes the Ka Gaga fan. Yeah, I don't know. That's not really doing it for me. Real talk. I don't know how I'm going to remember this one. Just the apostrophes above whatever this is, maybe. Alright, and we got to trace it, of course. Oh my god, perfect. I might be AI with how perfect these traces are. Not even going to cap. We got Gi. 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 There's no mnemonic for this one, so yeah, we're kind of on our own for this one. It's like the key thing, but like some shit coming out the side. I don't even know. Ginkgo is bank. Ginkgo. Ginkgo. All right, we got goo. Yo, they're kind of getting a little crazy here with gi and goo with these little water droplet marks, man. All right, Alyssa. Goo. We got kagu is furniture. Not to be confused with kaiju, which is like a Godzilla thing. It is. We said this is what, ko, so it's ko with teeth. So it's eating. You say goo when eating. Do you really say goo when you're eating? Huh. Interesting. Gotta flex the penmanship, of course. Boom. Easy money. Gi. Ga, I mean. Get. Genki is lively. Nice. Monomic. Think of some buff dude flexing his arms like, oh yeah, look at my gain. Oh, gains. Oh, that took me way longer than it should have. Look at my gains, bro. My muscles are getting bigger. Oh, okay. It's interesting how they throw the Japanese symbol for it in there. I think for me, the easier way to remember this one's probably going to be that used to play a lot of Overwatch. And where is this? What am I looking for? Yeah, I don't know. Looks like a sword almost. So that's how I'm gonna remember it personally. Bop. Bop. Alright. Let's put our knowledge to the test here. N is the lowercase h. Ku is that. Te is this one. Ga is, we said that one. Se. Ge. It's not ga. I think it's gu actually, low key. Hell yeah. So. Ooh, I kind of want to say te, low key. Oh, it is damn got me second guessing myself. Okay. Yi is this one. She is the hook. She's a hooker. Let's see here. So this one was ga. See, the apostrophes right here tell me it's either gi or ga. I think it's ga. Nice. And you said this one was so. Good deal. Alright, nice. So I guess after learning our new terms in hiragana, I guess we can do one final, like, just mass overview sort of deal, and then we'll switch gears into some video-based learning. I just realized I haven't even taken a sip of my coffee yet, so without further ado, nice. Alrighty, let's get into this master review. No. Yeah. We got Mu. Got Ko. Sa. Sue got that dump truck right there. Ru. It's not this little TikTok emoji, or not a little TikTok icon, so it's got to be this one. Nu. This one. That is N. That is, I was going to say ho, but it's definitely not. Ma. Nice. Sa right here. I want to say this is Wa. Oh, it's not selling right now. Mo is the one that looks like a mop. See, I don't know this one, but I'm not going to click I don't know. I like to take my odds with that 33% chance right here. I feel like this is one that we recently learned. So that would tell me that it's Wa. I don't actually know if it is though, but fuck it. Oof. Taking the L on here. Gotta take that one on the chin though. This is actually Ra. Wa looks completely different. A right there. Ha, because it looks like a heel. U is the sideways U with apostrophe. This we just learned is Wa. Hell yeah. Re. We got big ol' I want to say Ra. Do I? Ra or Ta? I think it's Ra. Nice. Ni is this one. Na, because he's throwing out some trash. We got Chi right here. Chi is right there. That is high. He, rather. Gu is this one, because apparently it's like teeth. Apparently you make a goo sound when you eat. Some people do, I guess. I don't know. We'll go right here. This one's interesting. I could tell it's a G because of these apostrophes, though, so it must be Gi. Wo is... This is Wa, I'm pretty sure. I'll say here. Nice. We got E is the Z with the apostrophe on top. Apostrophes again, so it tells me that's Gi. That is Ka, because it's like a K with his arm amputated or something. We got Ke right there, because it looks like a keg. I think it's Ga. Nice. We got Ki, one right there, because this looks like a key. Got I right there. Ma. Ma's right there. You, because he's like hugging somebody or something. It's not Sue because there's no fat dump truck. It's not Re because it doesn't look like a river. By process elimination, and I'm wrong. Nice. Missed the 50-50. So Gu, okay. That makes sense, I guess. Yo. It's this one. And we said, we just learned this one, so it's Ta. And I sold. Is not in fact Ta, that is so. And then T equals Ta. Okay, so we only missed 4 out of 40. It's not too shabby. Definitely room for improvement though. This one is me. Ni. Wa. Re. Okay. And this one's so. Re. Okay, not bad. Oh, I just realized I've been forgetting to open these packs right here. Let's open this one, see what we get. Oh shit. That is a rare find right there. It goes for at least $100 on the open market right now on eBay. So, pretty sick. Let's go over to our YouTube little video focus. Oh, videoception, streamception right here. Oh my god. Was I really not recording any of this? Jesus. Actual L. Okay. Let there be light. Alright, let's get into the video learning. Japanese listening practice. Okay. We'll go shopping expressions for today.
皆さんこんにちは。この日は2月14日、バレンタインです。でもここではお祭りの日です。このお祭りで私と友人は物をいろいろ買います。 買い物の表現が勉強できますよ。シャドーイングの練習にも使ってみてください。
Use this for shadowing practice as well. I'm not
こういう
really sure
お
what that
祭り
means,
のお
to be
店
honest.
を
But
屋台と言います。
it's food stall right there.
このお祭りではいつも屋台が出ます。保育園の子たちがいますよ。
It's crazy how different shit looks
保
over
育園
there
の
as
子たち
compared
は
to here in
こう
America.
いう帽子をかぶっています。このお祭りは毎年2月13日のお昼の12時から2月14日のお昼までやっています。小学生、中学生、高校生などは13日の夜行きます。
See where this is at?
昼に来る人たちは
Obviously
仕
it's in
事や
Japan,
学
but
校がない人たちですね。ここは道の上に廊下がありますね。面白いですね。お寺に着きました。
I got a KFC booth right there. That's cool.
今日のお祭りは
You're never too
こ
far
こ
from
のお
home.
寺のお祭りです。入り口の門は2階建てです。
That's the
カラ
fucking
フル
bell
な
tower
布が
in
見
Pokemon
えま
Heart
す
Gold.
ね。入り口には警察の人がいます。ここは階段が多いので大変です。目の前がお参りする場所です。こちらの列に並びます。この赤いもの、のぼり
Akaimono?
と言います。のぼりがたくさん立っています。ここに古いお札はこちらへと書いてあります。お寺や神社で買ったものは1年経ったらこういうところに持ってきます。そして
I like all
新
the
しいの
colors they
を
got
買い
going
ま
on.
す。
Looks vibrant. I like how in the middle there's just the
こ
France
の日
flag.
はとてもいい天気でした。
It was a very
富
nice
士
day.
山がきれいに見えました。
1年に1回ですか？
1年に1回、しかもいつもお堂の中に入ってるんだけど、ここまで出てきてるのもこの2日間だけ。そういうお祭りなの。
ちょっとよく見えませんが、赤いものの後ろにお地蔵様がいます。
Jizo?
そし
Jizzo?
て赤
Is that like
いものの中に
Japanese Lizzo?
もう一体のお地蔵様がいま
Oh, it's
す。
a Buddhist statue. Okay. My bad.
赤い方のお地蔵様は1年に1回しかここに出さないんだそうです。聞こえているのは祈祷、お祈りの声と音です。この赤と白の紐、これが奥の お地蔵様につながっています。お願い事がお地蔵様に届くようになっています。
Natemasu. Some real shit
こ
right
こ
there.
はお守りなどを売っている場所です。
So amulets and baylets,
という
that sort of
の
shit.
は悪いことなどから私たちを守ってくれるものです。いろいろな種類があります。紙みたいのはお札と言います。
お願いします。これですか。
3200円です。
Man, bro got racks. She.
ここから入り口の門の2階が見えますね。ここに鐘があります。今からおみくじを引きます。
A fortune slip.
おみくじはその年運がいいか悪いかを占うものです。
See if we can recognize any of these symbols. So this is she, but with apostrophes. So, I don't know what it is, but I know that it ends in that E sound, which is like an I or whatever. This is ko. We learned this one, but it's escaping me. This one as well. Learned it, but sadly, it's escaping me a little bit. But we do recognize these.
すみません、おみくじをやりたい。
おみくじどうぞ。はい。
はい。
よく振ってね、逆さにすると出ますから。
はい。
2回
一回。
?1 回。はい。
Ikai.
これ出ますか
Ikai, what's that?
いい
Once?
か悪いかを占うものです。
すみません、おみくじをやりたい。
おみくじどうぞ。はい。
はい。
よく振ってね、逆さにすると出ますから。
はい
2回
一回。
?1 回。はい。
Ikai.
これ出ますか
はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあ、ドキドキ。
Almost looks like a big pencil.
出てきた。これ自分取っちゃっていいですか？
はい。あれなんだえ、1が出た
これ一出した。はい。
ほら、ほら、おめでとうございます。大体1だぜ。
Whoa. They're losing their minds over that thing. Sheesh. She must have pulled a Galarian gallery or something.
しかも一番の大吉は
Oh, the
本当に
best
いいと思い
fortune.
ます。
Sheesh.
また来た道を帰ります。ここは唐辛子の屋台です。
Oh, I never knew they had chili pepper stands over there.
ここはだるまを売っています。
これおいくらぐらい？
どれですか？
このちっちゃい。
それがね、600円、
あ、これが
800円、1000円、1500円。
ちっちゃいは小さいという意味です。
See if I can decipher this one. Chi? Chitsuchi? Chisuchiya? I don't even know what that is. Let's see if we got it right.
このちっちゃい。
それがね、600円、
あ、これが
800円、1000円、1500円。
ちっちゃいは小さいという意味です。話すときによく使います。
Definitely got to brush up on my alphabet knowledge.
ですよね。
So I'll recognize some stuff, but
じゃあ、あんまりキチキチし しないで1000円十分ケチってるけど
でなんですか。
そうでね、2人いるんですよね。2人いる場合は色で喧嘩する可能性があるから同じ色がいい。そうすると赤は
Those things do look kind of crazy.
あ、ありま
Little
した。
design
やっ
on
ぱ
the front.
赤が赤はおめでたい、つまりいいことが起こりそうな色です。
Oh, so red means good luck. Interesting.
息子
See, over
2
here
人
we
が
typically associate that with green.
それぞれ高校と大学を受けるので買います。
Damn, her son's in high school and
これ
university.
は
Sheesh.
と言います。
This is called
ね、
something ma. Something something ma. We just learned this one. Unfortunately, the name of it escapes me.
ルマと言います。目がないですよね。
They have no eyes.
お願い事をしながら一つ目を描いて、そのお願いがうまくいったらもう一つの目を描きます。
Oh, that's a cool little tradition they got going on.
1000円になります。ありがとうございます。
じゃあ5000円で、
はい。
はい。
3000円。
はい、ありがとうございます。
Okay, everyone is trying to come up with crazy ways to skip ads. Like, chill, guys, just download Pi. This Chrome extension takes 5 seconds to set up and it blocks ads.
Skipperoo.
これは唐揚げの
Fried chicken
屋台です。
stall? Man, now they're talking my language.
もう終わってますね。
It's already closed? Damn. It's cool how this city is like
工事中です。
minimalistic is the
旅
word, I
館を
guess.
建てているみたいです。
I know in one of her other videos she said where she is or whatever, but
この道がある場所
I don't know,
は
I really like these
湯
trees as
村
well.
温泉という
The whole vibe of it's
観
pretty
光
chill.
地です。古い旅館がいくつもあります。
Several old ryokans.
でも古いので今この通りをきれいにする計画が進んでいます。素敵な観光地になりそうで楽しみです。大判焼きの屋台がありました。
I got fun all the kanji look. I think that's the correct term. What is that?
ました。
This was a what stand?
焼きの屋台がありました。
Three red beans?
はい、じゃあ450円です。はい、どうぞ。はい。はい、じゃあ600円のお返しです。はい、ありがとうございます。
I couldn't even really see what that looks like.
大判焼きは小麦粉のお菓子です。甘いです。あの階段は何
Hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa.
大判焼きないです。
It's the fucking real Pink Panther right there. Sheesh. Damn. The goat.
あの階段は何でしょうか。
Hidden level.
温泉の神様の神社みたいです。
A shrine for the deity of the hot springs. How badass does that shit sound?
鳥居と言います。
This is called Tori. What is this one again?
これは鳥居と言います。
Torimas?
鳥居があるのはだいたい 神社
And
で
there's
す。
usually a Tori. I guess it has to be Torimas. Torimas Gate. It's usually a
つ
shrine.
まり神社の門が鳥居です。
It's like we're playing Okami
長い階段ですね。
or like a Japanese version of
大きい木ですね。
Legend of Zelda or something. I'd say large tree.
ここからさっきの道が見えました。向こうの山は雪がありますね。雰囲気のいい神社でした。この道は私がよく行く山につながっているそうです。いつか歩いてみたいと
Adjust
思
my
いま
noise
す。
gate on my mic. Seems like it's catching some stuff that
さっき
maybe
の通りに
don't want it to.
戻ってきました。
We came back to the street we were on before. Good
10
deal.
円パンのお店があります。10円パンは500円です。
10 yen
10
bread
円玉
costs
の模
500.
様をしています。このケバブ屋さんは
Oh, maybe we're
毎
good.
年このお祭りで見ます。
Damn, they even have
Kofta.
kebab shops
Wow.
over there. I know that meal's slapping.
食べ
Beef
てみることに
sandwich,
します。
kofta sandwich. It's interesting how they have so many
一つ、はい。
English words on this. Really cover all their bases with their advertising.
ありがとうございます。
また保育園の子たちがいます。ありがとうって言いましたね。
ですね。はい、ありがとうございます。
買えました。では友人とコーヒーを飲んでから帰ります。
Coffee with a friend before heading home. Nice.
はい、すいません。ありがとうございます。
経験がないのでいつでもお使いになってくださいませ。
はい、ありがとうございます。
お願いいたします。お待ちしております。
残念。ね。
All right, let's switch gears into
Expand your vocabulary with our core
must-know
2000
Japanese
words
verbs
ebook.
real
It's
quick,
free and packed
'cause-
with essential
Oh,
expressions.
yeah, we're not buying that. Sorry.
Ask
Book before.
Do this for like 2 or 3 minutes before moving on to the
Ask.
next topic. Ask.
質問する。
Shit summon Shuru? What the fuck?
bathe
Bathe?
風呂に入る。
Furoni Hairu.
風呂に入る。
Furoni Hairu.
become なる。
Naru.
なる。
Begin.
始める。
Hajimeru.
始める。
Hajimeru.
to believe 信じる。
Shinjiru.
信じる。
Shinjiru. One of the most
Break.
important words in the book right there.
Kawasu.
Believe. Kawasu. Kawasu.
brush 磨く。
Migaku.
磨く。
Migagaku.
buy 買う。買う。
Kau.
call 電話する。
Denwasuru. Denwasuru.
can できる。
Dekiru.
できる。clean 掃除する。掃除
Sojisuru.
する。close 閉める。
Shimeru.
閉める。
Shimeru.
come 来る。
Kuru.
来る
Kuru.
cook 料理を作る料理を作る
Rio Tsuku.
correct
直す
Naosu.
直す
Naosu.
Cry.
泣く
Naku.
泣く
Naku.
cut 切る切る
Dance.
踊る
Odoru.
踊る
Odoru.
do する
Suru.
する
Suru. Alright.
draw 描く
Let's switch over to our engineering focus, or our STEM focus, which is engineering. So, I'll watch probably this one because it looks interesting, and I'll do this one. Because Donut tends to make pretty good videos. Pretty good as an understatement. They make some very good videos. Alright.
I'm chatting with a live H&R Block tax expert. It makes doing our taxes online
Yeah,
so
get your
easy.
taxes
There's
done,
also
people.
this AI tax assist for help whenever you need it.
Don't need the damn IRS on
Do
your
your own
ass.
taxes.
Drag racing, NASCAR, rallies, racing. Awesome cars make awesome power. And you know how we compare them with stats. But what's it really mean? We're about to find out. We're talking about horsepower and torque. The way Tony
Goddamn
talks about
torque,
it, torque
boy.
is a grunt. And horsepower is screaming. Torque and horsepower are both ways of measuring force. Torque measures twisting force, and horsepower measures work. And work is force over time. So let's start with torque. You probably heard of foot-pound. Pound is a measure of force. If you weigh 180 pounds, that's because your mass, what you're made of, is exerting 180 pounds of force on the earth. A foot-pound is a pound of force amplified by a foot of leverage.
Damn, bro's just dropping all the knowledge on us.
This
Shit.
is Jesse's toolbox. And this is a weird bolt in a board. This is a wrench. If I use a foot-long wrench and apply 1 pound of force at that bolt, I'm applying 1 foot-pound of torque on the bolt. If I use this 2-foot bolt buster and apply 1 pound of force at this end, I'm applying 2 foot-pounds of torque. If I apply
So the
2 pounds of
leveraging
force
will
at
affects
1
the
foot,
amount of
its force on the bolt
force
is
output.
the same as 1 pound
Cool.
of force from 2 feet. 2 foot-pounds or pound-feet. It's the same unit because it's math. The distance from the point of measurement amplifies the force through the lever arm.
That's that leverage.
I wonder where it all goes. Engine torque measures the amount of this force that an engine can produce. Let's get inside there. The pistons drive this crankshaft. You can see that where it attaches turns around the center axis, just like the wrenches turned around the bolt. Each explosion in the cylinder pushes the piston down with force. That force is exerted on the crank pin and transferred to the shaft to get it spinning. Torque is determined by 2 factors: the amount of force on the crank pin, which comes from the piston, and the distance of that force from the center axis, or throw, which varies by crankshaft. Makes sense? If the throw stays the same, then we produce more force from
What do
the
you say
piston.
throw was
Piston
again? Hold
actors.
on.
The amount of force on the crank pin, which comes from the piston, and the distance of that force from the center axis, or throw,
Oh,
which
okay.
varies by crankshaft.
So there's the distance from
Yeah. Makes sense?
the force
If
input.
the throw stays the same, and we produce more force from the piston, maybe with more displacement, we can increase the torque. If the force from the piston stays the same, we can increase the distance of the pin from the crankshaft center to increase torque. There's millions of combinations and variations that we can tweak to adjust the force exerted on the crankshaft, from the number of cylinders to the shape of the engine, even to the type of fuel we use, which we can get back to in a minute. Horsepower is a measurement of work, and work is force over time. James Watt lived from 1739 to 1819, and he loved doing math. Steam engines were changing everything during the Industrial Revolution, and Watt wanted to give people a way to measure all of the work that was getting done. Watt was watching work ponies, which are not tiny horses. Ponies are their own thing. You can look it up. But he noticed that a pony took about a minute to raise 220 pounds of coal out of a 100-foot well. And being a scientist, he increased that number by 50% because a horse is about 50% bigger than a pony. Whatever, it's a unit. As long as it's consistent, it can be whatever he wanted. He figured that one horse can do 33,000 foot-pounds of work every minute. A horse
crazy they
exerting 1 horsepower
came up with this
can
stuff
raise
with the
330 pounds of coal 100 feet in a minute, or 33 pounds.
the lack of
1,000
resources
feet in a
and
minute,
stuff
or
available
1,000
to it
pounds
back
of
in the
coal
day.
33 feet in a minute. That's work.
I mean, to be
That's
thinking like that back in like the
amount of
damn near
force,
1800s,
foot-pounds.
that's insane.
Torque produced over time is horsepower. Because torque is how much force an engine produces, horsepower is how quickly it can produce how much force. We can dive into
Sorry
this
about that.
by looking at how we measure car horsepower on a dynamometer. You can either put the car on a roller that'll measure the force produced at the wheels, or if you attach a shaft to an engine, you can measure the force driving the shaft and its speed. You start your car, you put it in neutral and floor
Force
it. Well,
driving the
engine runs
shaft
so
is
fast it
crucial.
explodes. A dynamometer applies a load to the floored engine and measured the speed it moves. You can hook an engine to the dyno, floor it, and use the dynamometer to apply enough of a load to the engine to keep it at, say, 7,000 RPM. You record how much load the engine can handle, and then you apply additional load to knock the engine speed down to 6,500 RPM, and record the load there. Then even more to get it to 6,000, and so on. You can do the same thing starting at 500 RPM, and then work your way up. What the dynamometer is actually measuring is torque. And because of math, to convert torque to horsepower, you just multiply the torque by the RPM and divide it by 5,252. That's horsepower. Why
Yeah, that's what I was just about to
5,252?
ask that.
Well, I'm glad you asked. You remember the horse
No
from
problem,
before
man.
with the coal? Okay. That horse moved 330 pounds 100 feet in a minute. So 33,000 foot-pounds of work in 1 minute is 1 horsepower. Now, for my dumb brain, let's use 100 pounds 330 feet in 1 minute, because that's also 1 horsepower. We need to show 330 feet in 1 minute as revs. So let's think of the wheel. The distance traveled in 1 revolution would be 2 pi r, or 6.28316.
Is that for the
330
circumference?
feet in revolutions is 52.52. Starting to look familiar? 100 foot-pounds at 52.52 RPM is 1 horsepower. Therefore, 1 foot-pound at 5,252 RPM is also 1 horsepower. So you take the torque, multiply it by the revs, and divide by 5,252, and you've found horsepower!
Alright, I need to turn this down a little bit. Bro's blowing his load right now. Alright.
When you plot horsepower versus the revs per minute for the engine, you get a curve like this one. An engine has peak torque, where it generates the most force. It has peak horsepower, where it produces the most torque most quickly. When you're trying to accelerate quickly, you want to try to keep the engine close to its maximum horsepower point on the curve. That's why you downshift to accelerate. By downshifting, you get closer to the peak horsepower on the curve. You want to launch your car from a stop? You rev the engine to get it right at peak torque. Then you release the clutch to dump maximum power to the tires. Let's take a minute to talk about why diesel makes more torque but not much horsepower. Think about what torque is. Remember the long wrench? Well, diesel has a much higher compression ratio, which means the head of the piston can travel further in the cylinder. That means the distance from the center of the crankshaft can be greater. That
All
means
goes back to
more
that crankshaft,
torque,
man.
But because the throw is greater, it's got more distance to travel to get through a revolution. So it can't move as quickly. And because horsepower is work done quickly, diesel engines can do a lot of work, but not as quickly as a gasoline engine when it's cranking at high revs. That's horsepower versus torque. Hit that subscribe button. It means a lot. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring the
Yeah. These guys make pretty informative videos. Crazy.
Efficiency
Oh, shit. It's crazy how much information, as Ty Lopez would say, knowledge is can be spouted in an 8-minute span.
EMAP is something that you'll find inside pretty much every modern ECU or engine control unit. Doesn't matter if it's aftermarket. A volumetric efficiency, or VEMAP, is something that you'll find inside pretty much every modern ECU or engine control unit. Doesn't matter if it's aftermarket or OEM, it's in there. And it is probably the single most important thing which determines how well your engine operates and how much power it makes in all sorts of different operating conditions and scenarios. But what's also really interesting is that this map is a really good teacher. And that is because, although it doesn't seem that way upon first glance, it's just a map, but within itself this map contains all the fundamentals of engine operation. How an engine works, it is reflected in this map. And it doesn't matter if the engine is a car, motorcycle, or truck engine, the essence of internal combustion engines is almost always pretty much the same. And it is contained within this map. So if you understand this map, you understand engines. And in today's video, we'll explain what is volumetric
video
efficiency,
quality just got
we'll
tanked.
explain how
The
this
fuck
map
is this
works and
about?
why it's so useful, and finally we'll do a practical tuning session to demonstrate how you can tune this map yourself. A VE map has two axes. Our vertical axis is engine hold. In most cases, engine hold is represented by MAP, or manifold absolute pressure. It is simply the air pressure inside your intake manifold. This data comes to the ECU from the MAP sensor, which is located somewhere on your intake manifold, and it measures the pressure inside it. Our horizontal axis is engine RPM, or rotations per minute. This data can come to the ECU from something like a crankshaft position sensor, which counts the number of engine revolutions and sends the data to the ECU. Alternatively, the data can also come from something like an ignition coil. The ECU registers the number of times the ignition coil fires, and based on this, it can calculate engine RPM. Now, at idle and other reduced load scenarios, we have vacuum inside the engine. In other words, the air pressure inside the intake manifold is lower than the air pressure in the atmosphere outside the engine. This occurs because the throttle plate is almost fully closed, and it's only letting in tiny little amounts of air into the intake manifold. But at the same time, the engine is running, and the downward motion of the pistons is creating a void or absence of air above the piston. Air from the intake manifold quickly rushes into the engine to fill that void, and then that same air is mixed with fuel, compressed, burned, and expelled out the engine as exhaust gas. In other words, we are consuming the air. The issue is that we are consuming more air than the throttle plate is letting into the intake manifold. So what happens is that inside the intake manifold, a unit of volume such as a cubic inch or cubic centimeter of air actually contains less molecules of air than that same cubic inch or centimeter of air outside the engine in the atmosphere. Because we have less molecules of air, we have less air pressure. And we call that a vacuum. Although the vacuum inside the intake manifold isn't true vacuum. True vacuum would be a complete absence of air. Instead, we don't have that in the intake manifold. We have...
So for the purposes of engines, essentially a vacuum occurs when there's less air per air volume inside than outside.
Something that could be called negative pressure, because it is air pressure reduced in comparison to the air pressure of the atmosphere. Now, as the throttle plate opens more and more outside air is allowed into the intake manifold. In other words, we're allowing the atmosphere to enter the intake manifold. And of course, because the engine cannot consume the entire atmosphere, pressure inside the intake manifold at fully open throttle becomes equal to atmospheric pressure outside the engine. The pressure equalizes because we have removed the barrier between the atmosphere and the intake manifold. We open the throttle body. Now, a naturally aspirated engine is called naturally aspirated because it relies on nature, the pressure of Earth's atmosphere, to push air into the engine. A naturally aspirated engine can never achieve significantly higher manifold pressure than the air pressure in the atmosphere, which is 14.7 psi if you're at sea level and a bit lower if you're at a higher elevation. And that's why a naturally aspirated engine is going to be limited to about this part of the VE map. And this zero at this part tells us that there's zero difference between air pressure inside the engine and outside the engine in the atmosphere. Now, A boosted engine, an engine with a forced induction device such as a turbo or a supercharger, can achieve significantly higher manifold air pressure than would be possible by relying on atmosphere alone. And that's because a turbo or a supercharger sucks in air, compresses it, and stuffs more air into the same volume, because
So
we
you
have more air
you
in
get
the
way
same
more
volume
air
than would be
in the
possible
same
by
volume.
relying on
Okay.
atmospheric pressure alone. Pressure increases well beyond atmospheric pressure. But the beauty of a VE map is that we can use the same VE map to successfully control both naturally aspirated and boosted engines. And that's because VE maps capture the essence of engine operation. We could also display our vertical axis like this. Instead of 0, we put 14.7 psi or 1 bar, which is atmospheric air pressure. Everything below that is now vacuum. And
So we can set this chart relative to the PSI of the atmosphere. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
lowest value would be around 3 psi, and highest value is now around 50 psi. But most aftermarket ECUs choose to display atmospheric pressure as 0, and that's because atmospheric air pressure is a constant. We can't do anything about it, and we're using it as our reference to see what the engine can add on top or remove from atmospheric air pressure. Now let's address the numbers inside the table. 87 of what? Well, this is actually volumetric efficiency itself. It's volumetric efficiency of the engine at that particular intersection of engine RPM and engine load. So this is then 87 of nothing. It's not any particular unit, it's percentage. It's 87%, and it tells us that 87% of the internal volume or the displacement of the engine, which is bore times stroke, or the entire volume of the cylinder above the piston when the piston is at bottom dead center. And 87% tells us that 87% of this has been filled with air. Now, you would think that the engine fills its entire internal volume or displacement with air at all times perfectly. Well, actually, it doesn't. The engine doesn't breathe equally well in all operating
This is getting
conditions
advanced
and
with damn
different
3D
scenarios.
graphs and
And
shit.
this is why we have a torque curve. And this is why we cannot achieve peak torque at 1000 RPM, for example, and that's because the engine isn't very efficient at breathing at such a low RPM. And this is again why a VE map captures the essence of engine operation, and that is because the VE map matches the torque curve of the engine. The more efficient the engine is at breathing, the more efficient it is at filling its entire internal volume. The more air there's in the engine, the more fuel we can add, the more powerful the combustion, and the more torque and power we can make. So a volumetric efficiency of 100% tells us that the entire displacement or internal volume of the engine has been filled with air at atmospheric pressure.
I would reason to bet, though, that it's impossible to achieve true 100% volumetric efficiency as I don't think it'd be very possible to fill this all the way up with air. You'd have some particles. Yeah. I explained that really shitty, I know, but...
So consequently, a volumetric efficiency above 100, for example 110%, occurs under boost. And it tells us
so that's where
that we
boost
have
comes
stuffed
in, okay.
more
So
air
then it is
into the
possible.
cylinder than would be possible
I was just
with
completely
atmospheric
wrong.
pressure alone.
Nice.
And this is why volumetric pressure efficiency goes above 100% under boost. So volumetric efficiency numbers essentially tell the ECU how much air is inside the engine at any particular intersection of engine RPM and engine load. By knowing the mass of air inside the engine, the ECU can then match that mass of air with an appropriate mass of fuel to achieve a desired air-fuel ratio. Now, something else you might have noticed is that VE actually falls off at high RPM. It gets reduced. Why does this happen? Shouldn't volumetric efficiency increase with RPM? Well, yes, it does, but up to a point. As you can see, it increases with RPM, but then at overly high RPM, it falls off. And this happens because at high RPM, the engine simply does not have enough time to breathe.
So the revolutions or the engine piston cycles at higher RPMs are too fast. So in order to maintain high RPMs, your volumetric efficiency will taper off a little bit. It's essentially what he's saying, which makes sense.
The motion of the valves is synced to the motion of the piston. And at very high RPM, we have very high piston speeds. So the valves are open for an extremely short period of time, which means that the engine simply doesn't have enough time to ingest the air and fill its entire internal volume with air. And this is why at very high RPM, VE, as well as your torque, starts falling off. Okay, now let's see how all of this works in practice. We are in the car, I have my laptop, we're connected to the ECU, and we can follow what happens on the VE map, how the ECU follows the VE map in real time. Now observe what happens if I take this value, this 61 here at idle, in our idle zone, and let's change it to, let's say, 30. You can probably hear that, and you can also see it in the software. Now our RPM is hunting. We have an
It's interesting how the software displays the RPMs going in kind of in a circle around the selected value.
unstable, a hunting idle. So let's fix this because this is annoying. And as you can see, immediately our idle is restored. The question is, why did this happen? Well, it happened because we told the ECU that there is less air coming in the engine than there actually is air coming into the engine. There is more air coming into the engine than 31% of the displacement, but we told the ECU it's 31. So the ECU adjusted, it added less fuel, and as you can see again in the software, it's there again so you can see it. Our air-fuel ratio starts becoming very lean as the ECU cycles through the cell. Again, we change it, and now again we have a very stable air-fuel ratio. The question is, why did it start cycling? Well, it started cycling because the ECU added too little fuel. There's too much air, too little fuel, and that's a lean mixture. An overly lean mixture for idling, so the torque output from the engine becomes weaker, and the engine cannot sustain the needed RPM due to this weaker torque output, and so the RPM goes down. And this brings us back into one of the other cells which have a correct VE input in them. So this again restores proper torque output, proper combustion, we have more torque, and then this sends us back to the incorrect cell, where again we have too little torque, so we fall down, and we have a cycle, a never-ending cycle, unless we fix the value in the table. The question that arises from all of this is, how do we know which is the correct value? Because in reality, we have no idea how much air is coming into the engine at any point in time. We don't really know
no sensor
how
that
volumetrically efficient
inside the engine that
is at all of these
monitors how much air is
RPM
coming in and out.
engine oil. Which begs the question is, how did this map come up? Did I make it up? Did I download it from somewhere online? Where does this map come from? Well, the map actually comes from the ECU itself, and that's because modern ECUs, like my AEM Infinity right here in this forest of wires, these ECUs are really clever. So when you first set up your engine, your ECU, and tell it what kind of engine it's going to run, the ECU is asking you for some basic engine parameters. Displacement, number of cylinders, what kind of ignition system, what kind of firing order, very basic stuff that you know about your engine already. And when you give the ECU these parameters, the ECU is going to spit out a generic volumetric efficiency base map based on these parameters. And in many cases, in actually the vast majority of cases, this map provided by the ECU is going to be enough to get you started and even driving around a bit. In many cases, this map is going to require only minor corrections until it is perfect. But there's more good news, because even these minor corrections to the VE map, you don't have to do that yourself either. The ECU does that for you as well by relying on this. Let me just show you. Let me just get in there. And this right here is your oxygen sensor. As you can see, it sits in the exhaust stream and basically measures the oxygen content in the exhaust stream. It's a bit more complicated. What it essentially does is that it provides a feedback to the ECU. it is telling the ECU very accurately about the actual content of the air to fuel inside the engine, inside the combustion chamber. And in addition to the wideband sensor, the only other thing you need is this. And this is perhaps the most universal map ever. It's called a lambda target or air-fuel ratio target map. These are your target air-fuel ratios. This is what you want to run at different engine RPM and load intersections.
11.02 is
very map,
optimal.
the very same map is applicable, I think, to pretty much any gasoline engine out there. So the triangle of VE map, air-fuel ratio target map, and wideband sensor works like this. The ECU reads the VE map and then it injects fuel according to the values in the air-fuel ratio target map. The wideband sensor then tells the ECU that it's off by a certain percentage. The ECU corrects the amount of fuel injected until the air-fuel ratio reported by the wideband sensor equals the target air-fuel ratio. The only other piece of the puzzle is your injector setup. You must tell the ECU the flow rate and the offset or dead time of your injectors. Fortunately, you don't have to guess anything here, as these numbers are usually supplied in the package with your injectors. Now, there is a limit to how much the ECU can correct the amount of fuel based on the feedback provided by the wideband sensor, and this amount is usually limited to 30%. In other words, the numbers in your VE table can be off by a maximum of 30%. This means that if your engine is something weird or extreme, you might be ingesting 30% more air in certain parts of the map, and in this case you'll be outside of the target air-fuel ratio, and the ECU won't be able to compensate unless you properly manually adjust your VE map. Even if you have to make large manual corrections to the VE map yourself, that's easy to do as well. All you have to do is observe the lambda feedback value on your laptop as you're driving. This is telling you how much the ECU is correcting based on what's it reading from the VE map until it hits the target. Alternatively, if you don't want to use a laptop, you can use a digital dash like this one that lets you see the data while you're driving. Now let's start the engine. And we're going to observe the AFR trim value right here. Let me zoom in a bit. And this is telling us how much the ECU has to correct to meet the air-fuel ratio target. And as you can see in my case, we have only minimal corrections, 2, 3, 4, 5% most of the time, and this is very much within what the ECU can do. However, if you were to see 30% minus or positive at certain RPM and throttle openings in this little AFR trim cell, then you would know that the ECU is trying to add or remove at least 30% fuel to hit the lambda target. However, as you're driving, you can see where it's happening, and then you can fix that area of the VE map until you are back within the scope of what the ECU can do. So that's pretty much it. All you really need are basic engine parameters, your injector parameters, the world's most universal map, and a wideband sensor, and you can build and fix a VE map by yourself in minutes. Isn't modern technology great?
All right, well, I think that was very informative. Volumetric efficiency is the efficiency of is how much air is filled into the piston at a respective RPM. So I guess that's the main takeaway. This dude's a beast. Driving for answers. Gonna leave a like, and then let's go to the home page, see if anything else really stands out to us. This kind of looks interesting, how electricity works for visual learners. Starting this one. But I'm going to take a quick, probably isn't even going to be 5 minutes, but I'm going to go to the bathroom, re-up on my coffee, and continue this little learning shindig we got going on. So I'll be right back. Alright, and we're back. Let's watch this how electricity works for visual learners video. Let's see if we can't learn some more stuff.
This is not electricity. You can't see electricity. You can only see its effects, such as light, heat, motion, magnetic fields, very expensive bills, and electric arcs. Take this simple circuit with a battery, a switch, a lamp, and a wire connecting them all together. The battery is adding energy to the circuit, and the lamp is removing this, transforming it into light and heat. We can flip the switch to control this. What's happening is tiny particles called electrons are moving through the wire from the battery's negative terminal through the lamp and into the positive terminal. They actually move a very...
It's interesting how it flows from the negative side first. See, I would assume when I first saw this that it would have flown from the positive side first, but
very small distance, but I'll explain that in just a moment. Many of us were taught that electricity flows from the positive to the negative. That's because long ago, Benjamin Franklin theorized that electricity was an invisible fluid. He rubbed a glass rod with a cloth, which then gave him a shock. He believed the cloth was adding more of this fluid, making it positive, while the person touching it had less, which made them negative. So he assumed that electricity flowed from positive to negative. Schools then taught this information, many still do, and we call this conventional current. Some years later, Joseph Thomson experimented with a cathode ray tube, a device with two metal plates in a vacuum. When powered, a strange ray appeared, and it oddly traveled from the negative to the positive side. He observed that a magnetic field influenced the ray's direction. He also noticed that when passed between electrically charged plates, it deflected in the electric field between...
How does rays react into a magnet? Like, it's just cool to see it play out in real time as opposed to just being limited to numbers or a diagram. I feel like it's easier to make things click, like in your head.
Between them towards the positive side. As we know, like charges repel and opposites attract. So the beam must be made of tiny particles with a negative charge that moves from negative to the positive. He called these particles an electron, and we call this electron flow. Unfortunately, Benjamin Franklin had guessed incorrectly. The cloth was removing electrons from the glass rod, and they were moving from the person to the rod. The common analogy is that the battery is like a pump, providing the pressure to push the current through the circuit. We measure this electrical pressure in the unit of volts. For example, this battery is rated to provide 1.5 volts, and this one is rated for 9 volts. The water flowing through the pipe is similar to the electrons flowing through the wires. We measure the flow rate in quantity per time, and we measure the current in amperes, or just amps. 1 amp is equal to 1 coulomb per second, which means that if 1 amp was flowing through this wire, then we would have 1 coulomb of charge per second passing this point. An experiment by Robert Millikan calculated the charge of an electron, which is a tiny number. But from that, we can calculate how many electrons are flowing, and we see that 1 amp is equal to around 6.2 quintillion electrons per second. So
crazy
we just
amount
say
of
1 amp
electrons.
to make it easier. The lamp is adding resistance to the circuit, similar to a section of thin pipe, limiting how much water can flow. We measure the resistance in the unit of ohms. So the voltage is the pushing force, which moves the electrons, and the resistance makes it difficult, so it limits the amount of current which can flow. But we can use Ohm's law to calculate the resistance, voltage, or current in a circuit as long as we know two values. So if we measure the current in this circuit, and we know the voltage, then we can easily calculate the resistance. From that, we can calculate how much energy is being consumed. By the way, I did make these handy mugs with all the formulas on.
That's a pretty fancy schmancy mug right
Links
there.
down below if you would like one. So where are these electrons coming from? Well, they are already in the wire, although some do come from the battery. The wire is typically made from copper, which is just a structure of many tiny copper atoms. Atoms are so small that this cubic centimeter of copper contains over 84 sextillion atoms. So this wire contains a lot more. An atom is just a collection of three particles: the electron, neutron, and proton. Different elements have different numbers of these particles. These elements are listed in the periodic table, and here we can see copper. I'm going to use the Bohr model to illustrate the atom, but some of you will be familiar with the more accurate quantum mechanics model of an atom. This is very complex and beyond this
Looks
video,
complex.
so we're going to use the Bohr model. This shows that the copper atom has 29 protons and 35 neutrons at the center, which forms the nucleus. It also has 29 electrons around the nucleus in different orbital shells. In the outermost valence shell, there is one electron, which is free to move around to other copper atoms. Due to ambient thermal energy, these electrons will naturally move around. They are mobile, and they move randomly in any and all directions. These mobile electrons are bouncing off of atoms and ending up roughly where they started, while some move left, some move right, so the average is 0. The electrons are negatively charged, and the protons are positively charged. Neutrons have no charge. When an electron leaves the atom, there are more protons, so it has a positive charge, and we call this an ion. The copper atoms are all sharing electrons, so inside the wire we have the same number of electrons and protons. Therefore it is balanced and no charge exists inside the wire. The protons are positively charged and their electric field lines point radially outwards, while electrons are negatively charged and their field lines point radially inwards. The field lines of two electrons or two protons will repel each other, but a proton and an electron will attract. If we connect a plate to each terminal of a battery, we would have a buildup of negative charge on one side and positive charge on the other side. If you imagine that these magnets are electrons and they are creating a neutral charge with their protons, when the battery adds an electron, it squeezes them, so the charge has increased. They only need to move a small amount for that to happen. We know that magnets can interact through their magnetic fields over a long distance without physical contact. The same with electric charges. Their electric field lines reach out across the gap. We can see that by applying a high voltage across these two plates. The grass seeds will align with the electric field, revealing the electric field lines. By the way, these arrows indicate the direction a positive charge would move. In our case, we use electrons, which are negatively charged, so they move in the opposite way of the arrow, which is a little confusing, but just remember it moves from negative to positive. Our battery has a negatively and positively charged end, so it has an electric field. By connecting a wire, we can direct an electric field through the wire, which helps to move the electrons from the negative to the positive terminal. The electrons still move randomly, but the electric field causes them to drift towards the positive terminal. As they move together through the wire, they create the electrons.
It's interesting how completing this loop causes the electrons to drift into a particular direction. You know, like he said, from negative to positive.
Move randomly, but the electric field causes them to drift towards the positive terminal. As they move together through the wire, they create a magnetic field around the wire. We can see that using some compasses. We use this to build electromagnets, and it's also used to drive electric motors. So how far do electrons move? Well, let's assume a current of 1 amp is flowing through this wire. We can calculate the drift speed, which is less than 0.1 millimeters per second, which means it would take a very long time to travel this small distance. But when I flip the switch, the light turns on. So how can electrons travel so slowly? If you imagine these are electrons, when we move an electron at one end, its influence travels much further and faster. In the wire, we have an initial pulse of electric and magnetic fields propagating down the wire at close to the speed of light. Then an electric field causes the electrons to drift because of the surface charges, and we'll see that in just a moment. If I take 1 meter of this resistive wire, the resistance gradually increases along the length of the wire. By the way, this is different to standard copper wire. We use it in things like toasters because the large resistance creates heat. Copper wires have almost no resistance. If we applied 10 volts across the ends, the voltage gradually reduces along the wire, but the current is the same at each point. That's because the magnitude of the electric field inside the wires is the same. So something is happening when we connect the wire to the battery. The battery contains a mixture of materials, specifically selected because they produce a chemical reaction which absorbs electrons on one side and ejects electrons on the other side. Imagine that the chemical reaction pulls in an electron and forces it to one end. Each time this happens, the electric field grows and makes it harder for another electron to move across. But the chemical reaction force is so strong that it keeps moving them until the forces become equal, and then it stops. If an electron leaves, the forces are unbalanced, so the chemical reaction forces another electron across to restore and maintain that balance. For me to move these magnets towards each other requires energy. They want to repel. For the chemical reaction to move this electron against the electric field also requires energy. For every coulomb of charge moved, it requires 1.5 joules of energy. That is our voltage, our electromotive force. This is the pressure the battery can provide. Other chemical reactions can provide different voltages. So, due to the chemical reaction, we therefore have a buildup of negatively charged electrons on one side, and the other side has a shortage of electrons, giving us effectively a positive and negative terminal. This charge at the ends of the battery is going to create its own electric field. Remember, our piece of resistive wire has a neutral charge inside because of the balance of protons and electrons. No electric field exists, and so no current flows. But when connected across a battery, the battery pushes electrons into one end and pulls them out of the other. So the build-up of charge at these terminals needs to transition.
An interesting way of looking at it. So essentially the battery is in a way a magnet for electrons as it pulls them towards the positive charge and pushes them out the negative charge. It's almost like it's eating the fucking electrons and shitting them out just for them to go back into the loop.
Negative to positive along the length of this resistive wire, which forms a gradient of charge. The charge is on the surface of the wire. We can think of it like a ring. There are regions with higher concentrations near the battery, lower regions elsewhere, and a transition point where it flips from negative to positive. Imagine we took a disk of copper. The protons and mobile electrons are balanced, but if we added some electrons to the center, they repel the other electrons away, and they can only go as far as the surface. The charge at the center remains balanced, so the excess charge must accumulate at the surface. If we remove some electrons from the center, the remaining electrons have more space, and they expose some of the positive charge of the protons. This effectively gives us a positively charged ring. So at the transition point, we have a positive and negatively charged ring, and on the sides, we just have two rings which are both negative or both positive, but one is slightly less charged than the other. Whenever we have a difference in charge, we have an electric field which points from the more positive to the negative. So an electron in this field will be forced towards the less negatively charged region. If you imagine it takes energy to force these repelling charges together, the energy is stored in the field between them. We can use this to move other charges. The gradient of charge creates an electric field around the entire circuit, which forces the electrons to move. The energy is stored in the charge around the wires. This resistive wire is the same diameter and the same material, and the current is the same at each point. So the magnitude of the electric field must also be the same, which is caused by the surface charges. In a normal circuit, the wires have almost no resistance, and they are relatively thick compared to the thin wire of the lamp. The electrons are very easy to move through the copper wire, but it's very hard to move them through the thin lamp filament. So the surface charges mostly accumulate at the battery terminals and either side of the lamp filament, with very little gradient needed along the copper wire. Using a multimeter, we can see nearly the full battery voltage across the lamp. with only a small voltage drop along the wire. If you think about water passing through a hose, when we place our thumb over the end, we reduce the cross-sectional area, so the water flows faster through this part, even though the same quantity of water flows before and after this point. The same must happen with electrons in the filament of the lamp. The electric field is stronger because of this.
The electric field is stronger because they're funneled into this, compressing them, and it releases more energy.
Steeper surface charge gradient, and that causes a higher drift velocity. But the same quantity of electrons move, so we have the same current. We can look at the math behind that in my course where I have more time to explain this. Links down below for that if you're interested. But these electrons are going to collide with atoms in the filament and transfer their kinetic energy into the lattice. It's very difficult for the electrons to flow through, so it keeps happening. The electrons slow down, but the electric field keeps forcing them to move, and they collide again and again. With each collision, the filament becomes hotter and hotter, and eventually it becomes so hot that it emits visible light. Now, the circuit typically has a switch to control when current can flow through the lamp. The battery is usually already inserted, and the switch is on the positive side. That means that this section becomes negatively charged, and this section becomes positively charged. So we have an electric field around the wire, but not in the wire, so no current will flow. When the switch closes, some very complex interactions happen within a fraction of a second before the light fully turns on. I'm going to briefly explain what happens. When the switch closes, the charges along the face of the switch will meet and cancel out, leaving just the surface charge rings with strong opposite charges. This creates an electric field which moves an electron. As the electron approaches the positive ring, that ring becomes slightly less positive and the negative ring becomes slightly less negative. Electrons are starting to move, so a magnetic field is developing, and the change in surface charge creates an electric field. The disturbance affects the immediate neighboring sections, so the electric and magnetic fields travel like a wave down the wire in both directions. But other sections of the circuit are unaware of this change at this moment. The electric field reaches out across the gap and influences the surface charges elsewhere in the circuit, creating small disturbance waves and a tiny current here too. As these waves move along the wire, they will hit parts which cause partial reflection waves. These waves interact with other waves, and they help to establish the gradient of surface charges and the electric fields, which stabilizes the circuit, and the light eventually illuminates with a constant current flowing everywhere in the circuit. All of this happens the moment we flip the switch. The electrons move such a small distance that they can't carry the energy from the battery. It's the electric field in the wire that accelerates them to deliver the energy where needed, and this electric field is due to the surface charges along the wire. It can be difficult to understand electrical engineering topics and the math behind them, but our sponsor Brilliant is where you learn by doing. There's so many new courses, but I really enjoyed their new Vectors course. The graphics and interactions just made
So it looks like the rest of this video is a bit of an ad, but I found that to be very informative. I'll leave a little like. I like the way he described stuff. Yeah, I guess the main takeaway from that one is that in a closed system, electrons move towards the positive from the negative, which is counterintuitive to what I had assumed previously. Let's see what the likes are. Let's see what the comments are. One of the clearest explanations on the whole internet. I agree. High quality, well done education for free. That's the gift that is YouTube and the internet. You know, I see no reason why you shouldn't try and learn everything you can, especially with this wealth of knowledge that we have access to. It's the modern Library of Alexandria, if you will. Let's go to Khan Academy and we'll brush up on some of our hard skills. All right. Let's see, my courses. Don't really want to learn. Let's see. So, as far as electrical engineering is concerned, course requirements. We're just going to look up a standard course requirement, and in order to understand the kinds of topics we need to know, or we should know for what we want to do, which is learn everything we can. So I've done Calculus 1 in real life. Electrical engineering, amplifiers, semiconductors. That's a STEM topic. Let's do can really start anywhere. I feel like doing some math though, so let's I guess resume differential calculus. Estimating limits from tables. There's a lot of videos I have to learn. That's an exercise. One-sided limit graphs. Ready to practice. Okay, let's just see how we do right here. The function h is defined for all real numbers as the limit of as x approaches -2, which is right here, -6. Incorrect. Is that not the output? Oh wait, the limit doesn't exist because they overlap. Okay. It's a rookie mistake. Limit as x approaches -7. That limit. I think the limit might not exist, but due to this being an open and this being a closed, I want to say it's -4.1. Okay, the limit doesn't exist then. No? 1.8? What the fuck? Oh, 1.3. Sheesh. I am getting exposed right now. As x approaches -2, the limit is just under -2, right? Oh wait, is x? It's like -3.8. Okay. As x approaches -3, there is no limit. It's either no limit or it's straight up 0. Okay, no limit. Nice. Keep on practicing. Yeah, we definitely need to keep on practicing. Up next video. I've actually low-key, I think I might do something else because I learned, or another thing, because I learned all about limits and stuff in college already. Actually, screw it. We might need to this might be important stuff to learn. Average constants. Okay. Where the hell even are we right now? One-sided limits. Alright, let's practice. Function g is graphed. Y equals g of x. As x approaches +1, the asymptote Would that not be -5? I know it might be unbounded because it doesn't actually touch it due to that. We'll check. Okay, never mind, I was overthinking it. The limit as x approaches -1. -1 right here. It's definitely not -1. Huh? G of x. Oh, wait, so I think this might indicate that as you're approaching 1 from the right side. That would make a lot more sense. In which case the limit is, I'd say unbounded, but second guess would be 1. Okay. Just establishing the parameters. It's been a good couple of years since I've had to do this stuff, so as x approaches 6 from the right side, the limit is -3. Unbounded. Okay, so why is it unbounded here? As x approaches -3 from the right side, the limit be 2, right? 6. So why is that? I'm just selling right now. 1 out of 4 right. Actual shite. Let's go back to here. As x approaches -5. The limit does not exist. No, it does exist. So 1.7. Okay, so cases that we have an open circle and a closed circle, we go with the limit that is the open circle. As x approaches -5, now, and it's coming from the left, the limit is, we said that one. So you just take the higher value? Is that what you do? Oh no, the limit doesn't exist. Isn't making too much sense right now, but I am also skipping over learning portions that I probably shouldn't be doing. As x goes to 2, we said that in these cases we take this value, which is about 1.5. Okay. As x approaches 0, the limit, it looks to be 0 as well. No? Limit doesn't exist? Okay. I need to not skip over this stuff. But at the same time, I don't know why my chat is just falling off. Oh, I think we're good. How long is this video? Look at the transcript. 12 minutes? I think we'll start with this probably tomorrow. I think that's the move.